Nolan Knows. Hey, it's time for the news. Well, Patricia Arquette is calling for wage gender equality. She said this at the Oscars. You know, I can clear this up real quickly. If women were being paid disproportionately less than men for the same job, why are there any men working at all? Because employers could save a ton of money just hiring women for less money. What nonsense that is. Well, the Republicans and some Democrats, it was bipartisan, managed to get through a bill that let the XL pipeline go through, but the president vetoed it. He said, yeah, it might create 40,000 jobs at first, but only about a half a dozen jobs that are permanent. Well, if that's the reason not to build something, nobody will ever build another house, will they? How silly. Build the pipeline. North Korea is alleged to be putting together somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 nuclear weapons, and they expect to have it by 2020. The United States is all concerned, and I understand the worry, but here's the truth. If you don't believe gun control works here, then you know international gun control doesn't work either. The bad guys in the international scene, just like the bad guys at the end of your street, will always manage to get a weapon. The solution? For us to remain stronger than them. Apparently, Honey Boo Boo, having put on so much weight, is going to, along with the doctors on TV, try and lose some weight. Listen, if your kid needs to dip his aspirin in mayonnaise or he's being fed with a slingshot, then perhaps you should put the kid on a diet. Makes sense to me. Honey Boo Boo is a tubby little pile of goo. There's a new Bill Cosby accuser out there. You know, there are so many of them coming out. I wonder when he had time to do any of his TV shows. I don't know how many of them are real or if they're all real. Time will only tell, but if it is true, it's a real big embarrassment. South Carolina police have arrested Elsa, the snow queen, apparently because of all the cold weather. They wanted to have a little fun, and local law enforcement went along with it. Good idea that law enforcement is a part of this. It's about time we take some of the heat off of them and show some of the fun things they can do, in addition to all the good things they do. The measles outbreak that is stretching across the country is, according to the CDC, not because of illegal immigration. I don't know if I believe that. I don't have all the facts and all the details, but here's the simple solution. Get your kid immunized. If not, they suffer the consequences of your decision. Google is planning to build a new headquarters, and the community where they're trying to build the new headquarters is a little concerned. Apparently, their unemployment rate is too low. Yeah, tell that to the people in Detroit who'd be thrilled to have Google move there. There wouldn't be a beer joint in Cleveland that would ever be empty again if Google would decide to locate to Northeast Ohio. These people have no idea how good they have it. They ought to be thankful that Google is going to expand and be in their city. It's going to create jobs, and that's good for everybody in the community. Georgia is going to execute its first female in some 70 years. You know, I always thought the worst problem with the electric chair was that it was a single-seater. But I've watched prosecutors hold exculpatory evidence. I've watched innocent people go to prison, later many of them to be released. I don't trust the government to do much. I certainly don't trust them to execute the right people. Doesn't mean that some people don't deserve it. It just means the government isn't good enough at discerning the good from the bad and who deserves it and who doesn't. I hope that they leave her in prison for the rest of her life. It's time for the story of the week. The story of the week is the verdict in the Chris Kyle case. The man who shot Chris Kyle and his friend was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. They didn't find him insane. Now, I wasn't in the courtroom, so I don't know. I have to take the jury's word for it that it was the right decision. But I find it difficult to believe that a man who thought a machine at work was a rotisserie for cooking people, a man who believed that he had a tapeworm inside of him that was eating him from the inside out, a man who had been on antipsychotic medicine for all those years, wasn't somehow crazy. I know that the barometer for whether or not somebody is crazy is whether or not they try to hide and cover up the crime, and I finally did subsequently get to hear his confession, but I'm not entirely sure that this guy wasn't crazy. But one of the problems we have with the insanity defense is the image that some people have about it. Some people think that someone who's been declared insane but guilty or innocent by reason of insanity, that they're going to be put in an institution for 6 months and then set free. And I think that terrifies them. I think it should be incumbent upon the judge to explain to these people that someone who is mentally incompetent, somebody who isn't responsible because of their mental illness for the crime they committed, that they are going to be in an institution until they're either cured or until they depart this vale of tears. That's the sad part of this story, because I think ultimately that's what kept this guy from being found insane. Not that I want him walking amongst us. I wouldn't mind if I thought he was cured. And it's kind of hard to put that together. People have a hard time with that. He's killed somebody, and in this case, an American hero, so somebody should be punished. I think the punishment is in his mind. I think this guy was insane. But again, not having been in the courtroom, it's not for me to ultimately to decide. It was up to the jury, and they said, no, he wasn't insane, he's just guilty. But we are now putting an awful lot of crazy people in prison. We're not treating them for their mental problems, we're just warehousing them in prisons. It's a shame that we're doing that. We need to change the law. We need to look into this more carefully. We need to get those people who need the mental help they need. It's time for It Sucks to Suck. Apparently, beneficiaries of President Obama's Amnesty program could actually claim more than $35,000 in tax benefits in their first year. See, they'll be assigned a Social Security number, then they'll be able to go back and get refunds for taxes they didn't pay or did pay. It gets confusing. They'll certainly get a child credit, earned income tax credit. They're going to get back, in many cases, money they didn't pay in. This really irritates me. $18 trillion plus in debt, heading up to over $20 trillion in debt over the course of the next 2 years. And they're taking thousands of dollars out of my paycheck every month so they can give it away, in many cases, to people who didn't earn it. I don't think people understand the damage this does. In this country, at one time, we didn't have a benevolent government. People had to work for what they could earn, and then they would have to rely on charity to make ends meet, and it gave them drive. It gave them reason to excel, to move up, to work harder, to work smarter, to make sacrifices to get ahead. As long as we keep giving people money that they haven't earned so that they can sustain themselves on the bottom rung of the ladder, they aren't going to try to move up the ladder. I don't want to see people struggle. I don't want to see people suffer, and I don't want poor people to just try to struggle to find a way to feed their families. But I also don't think it's fair to take my paycheck at gunpoint, and that's what it amounts to, because if you don't pay your taxes, they come after you at gunpoint ultimately, and redistribute it. You know, there's one more thing about this, and that is that any monies that are gained without production, that is to say, monies that you didn't earn, where you didn't provide a service, put something back, are actually bad for the economy, because that money in the hands of the people who earned it would have gone a lot further than it does. That would have been a great way for us to drive the economy, create better paying jobs. I think this redistribution of wealth ultimately just adds another straw to the camel's back, and eventually it will break. The republic can't afford the debt. Here's what was missed in the media. The Clinton Foundation apparently has been accepting money from foreign countries even when she was working as Secretary of State. The Clinton Foundation is Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea, by the way, but Hillary was the Secretary of State, and accepting money in a foundation with her name on it doesn't look good, particularly if somewhere down the road those countries look as though they're getting a favor from perhaps then President Clinton. Well, here's what we ought to look at. We ought to look at the fear the Republicans have of Hillary Clinton, and we really ought to look at the fear the Democrats should have of Hillary Clinton, because Hillary is going to be unelectable. We watched her book tour. We've seen a failed bid for the White House in the past. We've seen all of the gaffes that she's made publicly. She's not electable. And what's going to happen here is the Democrats are going to be compelled to find somebody else, somebody who doesn't have the failed history of the Russian reset that that Hillary Clinton has, somebody who doesn't have the Benghazi history that Hillary Clinton has, somebody who doesn't have this foreign money deal that Hillary has, and that's going to be Senator Warren from Massachusetts. Senator Warren from Massachusetts will probably end up with the nomination. She isn't going to be electable for the rest of the country. So ultimately what Hillary Clinton is doing is setting up the Democratic Party for failure. When they should be looking at a Southern governor someplace, a little bit more conservative, she's sucking all the money and all the wind out of the Democratic Party's presidential nomination, and ultimately she's going to fail. Ultimately, she's going to drive them to Senator Warren, and that spells doom for the Democratic Party. What Hillary Clinton should do right now is tell the Democrats, I'm not going to run, back out of it, give others a chance to seek the nomination. Not that I'd be terribly disappointed if the Democrats lost in the next presidential election, but she's going to seal the deal.